What's up, guys, and welcome to the NFL Week 12 player pool. Looking at another week where Jacoby Brissett is in a great matchup, but can we go back to that well? Plus, the secret weapon is about to debut. What's up, guys? Simon Edwards at PumaCom here with Heat Seeker Sports, and you're watching Player Pool. We're looking at the NFL Week 12 main slate. Got some weird matchups in this one. There are a lot of games that look like they're going to either be blowouts or just have low totals or bad matchups. So there's not a lot going on this week that looks that great, but we do have a situation with Jacoby Brissett, who is now in play for probably like a 6th consecutive week. I haven't been heavy on Brissett like since his run started. And last week, I actually made fun of people for going with Michael Wilson, who ended up going off for the most yards, receiving yards in a game this season. He had like something like 285 receiving yards. So it completely blew up in my face with that one. And he was only like 3,800 or some ridiculous price. But that was a completely wrong call. On the other side, I did get Sean Tucker right. And he was 1% owned in most contests. And he ended up going off as well for like a 30 plus week at near minimum salary on DraftKings. So that ended up being a hit. Unfortunately, it didn't really make much of a difference unless you had those Arizona stacks or unless you had some sort of a different combo other than the game stacks that I had last week. But we move on to this week's slate. I did have a good week on Underdog, I believe, last week or maybe the Thursday before that, but I got a hit on the Raiders game. I ended up having 5 for 5, ended up being a 51x return there. So that made up for anything on the DraftKings main slate. But I put that short video on my YouTube channel, which gives you another reminder to subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm trying to get to 2,300 now. I am about 70 short of that. So if you guys can hit the subscribe button, that'd be great. You want to hit subscribe anyways to get alerts for when all these shows go up, but also to access the secret weapon. So the secret weapon, I'm going to be demoing it today. You guys can sign up for it today. You need to be signed up for the subscribe to the YouTube channel in order to make that happen. But subscribe to the YouTube channel. Then you can go over to sportnuggets.com is the name of the site. And it's going to have a bunch of news. We're flooding the zone with news. I wanted to make sure that all these players that we look up when we're in emergency situations, like we hear a starting running back is having struggles or is going to be hurt, and maybe the backup will do something. Like a lot of news or nuggets aren't out there about that backup because he hasn't been talked about a lot, or the main sites that track news or that put out news aren't tracking these lesser known players. If you remember a couple years ago when I called the the Chase Brown breakout week before anyone had heard of him, the reason I did that was because I was scanning around for local beat writers or local podcasts, trying to get information because I knew that Joe Mixon was struggling, and I knew that the team, from listening to some of the local podcasts, wanted to do something about giving Joe Mixon less work and working in some of their backup running backs. And one of those backup running backs was a guy named Chase Brown who had just come off of IR. And it was being talked about that he was going to be potentially having a role in the offense that particular week. It was a showdown slate. And when I was going over Showdown, I remembered that nugget, and I relayed it to all you guys that there was some talk about Chase Brown potentially getting an opportunity, and he was something like $200 on that slate. And he ended up having a monster game that week, ended up getting like 90 yards and a touchdown, which was big for that particular situation with a guy that's only $200, and ended up being a slate-breaking opportunity. And then he followed it up like the next week. He was on the main slate, and I was also pushing him on the main slate, and he ended up going off there as well, and ended up being a huge advantage for us, like getting him at, it was sub 5% ownership. And all of that basically happened because I had a ability to kind of look at those local sources and local podcasts and beat writers and everything like that, and just kind of focus on people who knew the team the best, which we don't get when we're looking at, like national guys covering nationally, or guys who don't specifically target individual team for news. So saw that with Sean Tucker last week as well. I'd been getting updates from local podcasts and stuff like that, that Sean Tucker was likely to get an opportunity with Rachaad White. He wasn't putting up the underlying stats that they were looking for Rachaad White. So I'm going to go over right now and give you guys a demo real quick. We'll go over to the site, which is called Sports Nuggets, or Sport Nuggets. So make sure to check us out. And what it is basically is it's a giant filtering system and news update system. Like, I'm pulling from about 700 different feeds. It's close to real time, but it's not quite there yet. We're waiting to see what kind of subscribers that we can get. When we get closer to our target subscribers, we can turn on the real time. But I need you guys to subscribe to this site. It's free beta preview for now. You go to the sign up. This will be a sign up tab right here, so you can sign up for the access. And what that'll do is it'll enable you to go to like a see more option and kind of see more information on these nuggets. What we're doing, we're pulling from 700 different feeds, 700 different sources of people who specialize on individual teams, and we're putting out all the mentions of these players into nugget forms. So anytime like one of these players gets mentioned in a podcast or a tweet or a YouTube video that we're following, a nugget's going to be created. There's going to be an AI aspect to it, like where AI does a summary of what the nugget is about. The analysis is going to be, kind of an AI analysis of that nugget. That's where you're going to see the see more and get an idea of what the analysis of the nugget is. And then, when you do that as well, there's going to be some. I've only done one of these so far, but what we call insights is going to be myself and Spread a Stare for now. We're going to be going over these nuggets, and we're going to be looking for certain news or certain information where we can add an expert insight into what we think this news means. Like, this is an example of Will Johnson. Speaking of the Arizona Cardinals, with Will Johnson, he is still dealing with an injury. He's questionable this week on the Cardinals defense. If he is out, it makes a huge difference with the way that the Cardinals defense performs against the pass. So they go from a top 10 pass defense to a bottom 10 pass defense. So Will Johnson is a guy that we want to keep track of his injury status, and you can kind of see the reason why with that human insight that I'm adding. We're going to add these insights onto the most important nuggets just to get you guys an ability to filter out the most important nuggets if you don't want to flood the zone. If we go to click this icon up here, the logo for Sport Nuggets, That's going to take us back to the home page. So you can see all these nuggets again. We have all sorts of filtering options. When we have different sports, you're going to be able to click on league and have options for different sports. When you go to sort, you can sort from newest to oldest, oldest to newest, alphabetical. You can sort by trending. We have a trending option that's going to basically be when a player's news is upticked on a given day, like they will become a trending player. We're going to have injuries. Like if you want to sort by injury, you can click on injury and see all the guys with injury designations and kind of go through and see what's significant. We see Jackson Dart is out this week. We can kind of see Zay Jones is out. Rashad Bateman is going to be out again this week. So we got Ramondre Stevenson is questionable. We can kind of look and see, okay, he's questionable. What's that going to mean? And getting a better idea of how questionable he is. Maybe we want to explore this one a little bit more and go to Ramondre Stevenson. We click on his name. We get all the nuggets here for Ramondre Stevenson. It filters them all for us, and we can get a better idea of, what specifically is the questionable tag, if it's more likely that he's going to be out or in this game. We can also filter by games. I have the game schedule up top here. So if you wanted to, you could go to Houston versus Buffalo. Well, that game already happened. We can go to Baltimore versus the Jets and click on that and scan through and kind of get an idea of the Jets or the Ravens, what their latest news and nuggets are. If you wanted to go just with Baltimore, you could come over here to teams and filter out the Jets and just go with Baltimore. And then you just have Baltimore. And you can do this. You can start from this point too. You can just pick any team that you want to get the nuggets on and kind of scan through and look for the nuggets. We have a search option if you wanted to type in a specific player. Not sure if I spelled that right. Let's see. Let's go with Joe Burrow. I got to take off the filter there. My bad. All right. So Joe Burrow. So we're getting all the Joe Burrow news. It's looking like he will not play this week. We find that out very quick by typing on his name and kind of getting the most recent news and nuggets. These nuggets came out. Well, these are like older nuggets. Let's see. We'll go to the Bengals versus the Patriots. I think Burrow is still questionable this week, so we probably just haven't gotten the nugget on it yet. But a lot of stuff on Ramondre Stevenson. Here we go. Joe Burrow ruled out against the Patriots due to injury recovery. If you get an issue like that where you're getting that one player, it was probably a bug there. Just hit the Sport Nugget to reset it, and then when you click on the game, you can kind of see the latest news and updates. But we see Joe Burrow ruled out against the Patriots due to injury recovery, so he's still not playing this week. We're going to get Joe Flacco for another week against the Patriots. You kind of seen like Drake May has had some news about him recently with the situation on First Take where Cam Newton, questioned the legitimacy of the Patriots, and Drake May got in the middle of that controversy, and he's been having a lot of nuggets recently. But Joe Burrow is obviously the top trending guy because of the news that he's not going to be playing. We can check it. We see Christian Gonzalez trending. We can kind of see what if there's any news on him. No, not really seeing any news on an injury or any type of matchup situation. He just happens to have some decent amount of nuggets on him this week. So we can click on that, reset it back to the main page. Other filters and sorts that we have. The insights, if you click on the insights, like I said, it'll take you to all the nuggets where we actually added our human insights onto. If we go to team, you can pick any team that you want to filter to get the news on. If you go to position, you can pick any position. We have defensive positions on there as well. We can get pretty specific with our positions too, where you can just click on the group as a whole, and source. So if you want to just find all the podcasts that talked about a guy, or all the Twitter mentions on a guy, or YouTube, or whatever, you can go and check that out. One of the cool things too is if we get a nugget on, say, Brock Bowers, and we want to say, okay, what's the source saying about that? You can click right here. It's going to take you to the directly to the source, so you can get an idea of what the specific source is saying about an individual nugget. Let's see. So these are, all sorts of different ways that you can get to the news that you're looking for. And, just it's just going to make our lives a lot easier when we're trying to find significant news and nuggets about, like these individual players. There's going to be a social media aspect to it too, where you guys are going to help us out with determining the most important news and nuggets. Obviously, if we're flooding the zone, some of these nuggets with AI, we're not going to be able to know if every single nugget passes the sniff test. So when you guys are logged into your accounts, you're going to be able to, to add your comments on a nugget. If you think a nugget is important, you're going to be able to add a comment on what you think of the nugget, or put a thumb up or thumb down on the nugget to give it your own rating. You can favorite a nugget by hitting the star button, and that's going to save it to your favorites. And, there's all sorts of ways that you guys can impact, the rating on a player. We're going to use this rating is going to be more of a social media rating. It's going to be how many times our visitors are clicking on comments, or liking the nugget, or just any interaction basically, or an engagement that a nugget gets, is going to affect the rating. The default is a rating of 3. That'll go up as high as 5 for the valuable nuggets, and as low as 1 for the invaluable nuggets, but a 3 is more of a neutral rating. So you'll have an idea on the nuggets which are getting the most engagement by the rating. And then the trending is going to be based off of, like how often a player is being mentioned by our feeds. So very cool aspect here. You can also get in our Discord. You're going to want to get in our Discord to, join the conversation. A lot of these times when I'm doing my showdown analysis and stuff like that, it'll be easier to get into Discord and kind of give rundowns on, like what I'm thinking about certain guys. Also, I'll be adding insights when we have these showdown slates on the guys that I like the most, but in order or don't like. So in order to access all that, like I said, you're going to need to subscribe to it. It's a free beta preview. You don't have to worry about paying anything yet. Once it goes live, we'll figure out, like what the subscription cost will be. It's not going to cost you an arm and a leg like a lot of these other subscriber sites. So it's going to be very affordable. It's going to be easy to use, easy to access, and it's going to be easy to do what you want to find the news that you want. So that's a long rundown. Me and Spread will demonstrate it when we do the showdown show this week. Going to be for Sunday Night Football. But for now, we can get into the analysis on the slate. And I just got to check my text real quick here. My wife blowing me up about my son's iPad cable in the car. So tough to go on a long car trip with a 6-year-old when he doesn't have his iPad fully charged. So let's get into the first game here. We got the Jets versus Baltimore. We are looking at let's see, Jets versus Baltimore. We're looking at a 44.5-point total in this one, with Baltimore as 13.5-point favorites. There's a lot of these games that are going to be easy for us to just kind of cross off. For this particular game, the only guy I'd really be interested in is Derrick Henry with a total like this. And Henry has been a much better player when Lamar Jackson is playing, and he just has a much better setup. They just lost Quinnen Williams, and he was their run stuffer. So the Jets are kind of deceptive on paper. They've only been giving up 16.9 DraftKings points a game to the running back position, but without their best run defender, Derrick Henry should be able to take advantage of that matchup. As far as other matchups go, the Jets have a decent wide receiver matchup on paper, with Baltimore giving up 25.2 DraftKings points a game to the wideout position. Tyrod Taylor is supposed to be starting in this game, so that will improve the outlook for the wide receivers. Justin Fields has just not been good this season, and we're getting a start from Taylor. It's looking like to be the starting quarterback in this game, and that'll upgrade the passing options. The Baltimore defense has gotten healthier, though, so it's a little bit deceptive on the points that they've allowed. And on top of that, we still got Garrett Wilson on IR, so it's a bunch of Jags that he's throwing to. So, if you want to get into a guy like John Mechie, he ended up being the guy that had a decent week last week, scoring a touchdown. We had it on, I believe it was a showdown slate, and Mechie ended up being the guy that was needed in that particular showdown at probably a dirt cheap price. I think he was probably like $1,000 or something like that. But John Mechie could be interesting in this one. We got Rashad Bateman out in this game as well. When Bateman's out, that's good for DeAndre Hopkins, but it's a situation with Hopkins at 3,300 as well, where we don't know, how much they're going to need to rely on their passing game this week. So, rough situation there. Adonai Mitchell got a bunch of targets. He gets open a lot, but he can't catch the ball. He was 1 for 6 for 10 yards last week against New England. And, guy just struggles in general to catch the ball. Had that same issue when he was with Indy. And, he's blown a couple big situations just because of his inability to catch the ball, despite being, great at, getting open. With the Breece Hall situation, Breece Hall, not a great game versus New England last week. They got a good run defense, though. With this particular matchup, the Ravens are only giving up 16.9 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. So 6,100 is a pretty cheap price for Breece. I just don't like this matchup. And really, Derrick Henry is the only guy, unless I want to get salary relief with some of those Jets receiving options with Tyrod throwing to them this week. We got Pittsburgh versus Chicago next. 44.5-point total in this one. 2.5-point spread, with Chicago as 2.5-point favorites. This one is probably like one of the games that I'd be more interested in this week, just because of the tight spread, and we got an ability of Chicago to put up points. The defenses are of both teams are best against the running back position, with Chicago only giving up 17.2 DraftKings points and Pittsburgh only giving up 17.9. Chicago does have a advantage in the passing game, though, with the Steelers giving up, let's see, we go to Caleb Williams. Steelers are giving up 19.5 DraftKings points to the quarterback position, 34.1 to wideouts, which is a huge number, 13.5 to the slot, and 17.4 to the tight end position. So everybody in the passing game is in play in this one for Chicago, based on those matchups. And see if I can find any anything I read this week on Caleb Williams. Let's see. Yeah, according to Rich Rebar had an interesting nugget in his article, just mentioning that the Pittsburgh defense has kind of been calibrating according to their opponent. So this is a recent thing with Pittsburgh, last few weeks or so, where they've been catering their defense to face off against the opponent. So Caleb Williams, if they do that, they'll know his weaknesses, be able to exploit his weaknesses. But we've seen some big weeks out of Caleb with 38.7, 25.1, 19.9, like in some other big weeks. But I'm not sure how high I would be on him. But in a thin week for quarterback, or what looks like it's going to be a thin week for quarterback, I don't mind going to Chicago, Pittsburgh stacks in this one. Rodgers has a fractured wrist, but he's going to play. He wasn't playing very well with a unfractured wrist, so I don't know how he's going to do in this game. With Chicago, their biggest weakness is probably slot and tight end. So they're going to have an ability in Pittsburgh to target the slot and tight end. The problem is their tight ends is a three-way committee with Freiermuth, Jonnu Smith, and Washington. I'm not in love with any of those guys. And their slot receiver has basically been Calvin Austin, but Calvin Austin has not done anything with that role. So it's tough to get on board with any of these Pittsburgh guys. And with Chicago, Odunze would probably be the guy that I'd be interested in. DJ Moore has not been playing well this year. We do have Luther Burden at 3,600. I like that price on him. Luther Burden could be interesting for us this week at 3,600. So, I do like Luther Burden this week. And other than that, not really interested in a whole lot in this game. I'd like to be interested in DK Metcalf, but they're just not using him. It's Arthur Smith offense. Like, it's just like these Arthur Smith offenses just take all the value out of the studs on the team. And then, on top of Aaron Rodgers, he's only thrown the ball, like one of the lowest ADOTs in the league. So it's very difficult to get behind any of these Pittsburgh guys unless we're in a showdown slate. So let's move on to New England, Cincinnati. This is another game I'm interested in. They're playing in Cincinnati. Cincinnati's been a lot better playing at home. We just saw from the Nugget site that it's going to be Joe Flacco starting in this one. And we're missing Jamar Chase in this game. He's suspended, so he's going to be out for this game. T. Higgins, that's going to bump T. Higgins up as the guy that we're going to want to target in this one. And he's facing off against a New England secondary that's giving up, they're only giving up 20 DraftKings points a game to the wideout position. So it's not horrible, but New England should be able to put up points against Cincinnati. So that'll force the passing game on the Cincinnati side. We're looking at Chase Brown is one of the highest projected owned guys on the slate. He's at 6,200. Let's take a look at the injury report here on the New England side. So we go into the Patriots. I want to see if there's any damage to their defense here. Milton Williams is on IR. Landry is questionable. A couple other guys on IR as far as their offense. Just Ramondre Stevenson is questionable. Antonio Gibson is on IR. Brock Lampy, IR. It's just so nothing really significant with the injuries there. But Chase Brown is the highest projected ownership. I'm going to have to do some more digging and see what the thinking is there. Because I'm not, I know he had a big game last week. let's go over to Chase Brown here. So he had 18.7 DraftKings points. He's had 3 good weeks in a row. But New England's had a pretty good run defense. And, maybe it's something to do with the fact that Jamar Chase is out, but I'm going to have to rack my brain on that one. The 37 DraftKings points is what the Bengals have been giving up to their running backs, though, to opposing running backs. So that's going to put Travion Henderson on the map for us. We're waiting on that final Ramondre Stevenson news. Be keeping an eye on Sport Nuggets to figure out when that comes out, and we can decide if we want to start Travion Henderson. But we should be able to start him regardless, and maybe even Ramondre if he's playing, even as a split backfield. He might be interesting. This is how bad the Cincinnati Bengals defense has been against the running back position, especially. They've been better against the pass. They're only allowing 14.1 DraftKings points a game to wideouts. They've got a really good corner for outside receivers, but they've been more vulnerable in the slot. Cincinnati's given up 12.6 to the slot. And, that's Stephon Diggs and Demario Douglas. So Stephon Diggs would probably be the guy that they go to if this ends up any type of a shootout, in addition to Hunter Henry, because they're giving up 27 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. Hunter Henry, have not really seen too much out of him, which is good if we want to catch a sneaky start here. Let's check out the ownership on him. I see Hunter Henry at 11% owned, so not catching him sneaky at all. He's the second highest owned guy on the slate, and has not really done much of anything. But I've been targeting tight ends against this Cincinnati defense all season, so kind of hard to get away from him. In a chalky spot like that, but 11% for Hunter Henry when he hasn't really been doing too much. Like we're just solely going on the matchup there. So better idea might be to bet against it, but 11% is not that terrible. On the Cincinnati side, remember when Higgins was out last season, Gesicki would step up and have big games? Well, with Chase out, we could see Gesicki coming back from injury might be in a good spot this week to get a decent amount of usage. He's kind of like their de facto wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 2 when they run into these situations. So Gesicki could be in play for us this week. And he is at $2,600. He's also got that timeshare in Cincy with Fant and Sample and Hudson. So, a little bit tough to get behind Gesicki, but, he could be in play this week for us at 2,600. The guy to keep on our radars and see what kind of news flows for us. I do like Joe Flacco this week because I think if New England is putting up points, then Cincinnati should be able to respond just the way that Joe Flacco's been playing, especially when these guys are playing at home. They do much better. We see this 29 points at home, 24 points at home, 36.7 points at home versus, like some of the road games. I believe his first game was versus Green Bay at 18.8 DraftKings points, and then he had 10.9 at Pittsburgh. So, Joe Flacco could have a home thing going for him in Cincy. So Flacco is at 5,500. He's getting more expensive. He's not the same cheap guy that we were drafting and using just a few weeks ago. With Drake May, probably the best play on the slate from a quarterback perspective. Let's see what his ownership is. Let's see what we see for Drake May this week. He's hovering around 10%. So Drake May, not too bad there. But if this game shoots out, Drake May is going to be significant. He's only 6,900. He hasn't really gotten up to that top tier of pricing, despite it being pretty consistent, 20-point DraftKings point scorer. He did not get that high last week against the Jets, but if Cincinnati's able to make this a game, then Drake May will be significant this week. Giants versus Lions. We got Jameson Williams starting for us this week. This should be a fun game to watch. If Detroit is putting up a bunch of points on the Giants and Jameis Williams is forced to Jameis Winston, is forced to throw the ball. Last week, didn't really see too much out of him. He only had 29 attempts, 19 completions, but that was against Green Bay, a much better defense. So now we get Jameis against Detroit, which is more exploitable. And let's see what the situation here with Slayton is. Is Slayton in this week? Doesn't have an injury designation, so Slayton should be back, and that gives him a deep target to throw to. So I would be interested in Slayton this week if you're doing Detroit stacks. The other guy, let's see, where is he at? Wan'Dale Robinson should be interesting. 9 targets last week, only 4 receptions, only 7.6 DraftKings points. Nothing really great last week, but we've targeted these slot receivers against Detroit in the past. Detroit's kind of had a weakness against slot. They're giving up 14.7 DraftKings points a game to the position this season. So that does make him interesting. They're a heavy man coverage unit, the Giants and the Detroit defenses. So let's see if Wan'Dale has any nuggets on him. Detroit, 8.2 touchdown rate to slot receivers. So that makes Wan'Dale interesting from that perspective. I'm probably more interested in Slayton in this matchup, even though they've been giving up more to the slot. They've still been vulnerable to wideouts, giving up 19.3 DraftKings points. But I want Jameis. I want Jameis to Slayton this week if I'm stacking that Giants side, and maybe Wan'Dale, give him a second receiver, and you can run it back with just about anybody on the Detroit side. I like the matchup for the running backs, especially with the Giants giving up 26.9 DraftKings points. We saw that big game out of Jahmyr Gibbs just a couple weeks ago when he scored 41 points. We've seen another 40-point output from him. That was against Tampa Bay, and one a couple weeks ago was against Washington. We could see a 30 to 40-point week out of Jahmyr Gibbs again this week. And we also got David Montgomery. If you want to go in that direction, his usage has been a lot less this season than previous seasons. They've talked about wanting to get him more involved, but they haven't delivered on it. So I just don't know what to think with David Montgomery, but I do like Jahmyr Gibbs. If we're looking at the receivers for the Lions side, I think I'm more interested in the run game, but the passing options both have middling matchups with 20 points allowed to the wideouts and 10 points allowed to the slot. So, Amon-Ra's in play, unless you think that Detroit is going to live up to expectations, blow this team out. It's 49.5-point total with Detroit as 10.5-point favorites in this one. So might see limited usage of Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown, but Detroit coming off of last week's loss to Philly might be looking to make a statement in this one. This is their first home game in a few weeks too, since week 9. So we could see them decide to run up the score in this one, and that would make the Detroit side pretty interesting, playing at home in a dome in this one, and then running it back with Slayton or Robinson, one of those guys. Like this game is definitely stackable since we're not as concerned with the Lions stepping on the brakes if they take a big lead when they want to get aggressive. Minnesota versus Green Bay. We're looking at a 41.5 point total in this one. Green Bay is 6.5 point favorites. 9. It's been a disaster. Continues to be a disaster. I don't know why people still recommend this guy. I guess he's had a couple decent weeks, and he put up a 20-point week. But he's got too many of these like sub 10-point weeks against easy matchups like Chicago. Chicago's been one of the easier matchups. Atlanta's put up given up a lot of points too. So yeah, McCarthy is just he's just not very good. Jordan Love on the other side is at 5,800. He's getting cheap. You can see he hasn't been putting up a whole bunch of points. As far as the matchup, Minnesota is only giving up 14.4 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position. Jordan Love how's he been doing? Let's check out how Jordan Love does against these defenses of Minnesota. We'll go over to Pro Football Reference here. Look at his game logs. We'll go to career. And when those come up, we're going to sort it by opponent. We're going to go down to Minnesota and see what he's done versus Minnesota. Let's see. Most recent game was in 2014. 185 yards, 1 touchdown. He had a game with 389 yards and 4 touchdowns. Let's see. Yeah, 4 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. 256 yards and 3 touchdowns. 229 and 1. So he's kind of a mixed bag, but the most recent games, he's had some pretty good weeks against this defense. So, Jordan Love could be in play for us. It's a 6.5 point total in this one. We're looking at Josh Jacobs is hurt. He had a knee contusion, so he's going to be out in this one. So we can take a look at the running back situation. Minnesota on top of that is allowing only 19.8 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. He's still listed as questionable, but my understanding is that he was out or close to out. This is where we can, let's see. Yeah, it looks like even on Nuggets, I'm not seeing any news about him being out specifically. Let's see. Josh Jacobs listed on Packers' final injury report. Let's see. Jacobs is among players mentioned. Yeah, he's questionable still. So when that news comes in, Green Bay's got 9 players listed as questionable. Let's go over to the depth chart, kind of take a look at that situation. Matthew Golden is questionable. Josh Jacobs questionable. Wicks and Savion Williams both questionable. A lot of their receivers are going to be questionable in this one. Dubs and Watson are the guys that I'd be interested in anyways in this matchup. Very, let's see. Very tough, even if Jacobs is out to roll with Emmanuel Wilson, other than his price being 5,300. He's the backup. He would benefit from Josh Jacobs being out, but it's not a great matchup for him. It's the only problem. I'd be more interested in the passing game here, like with Jordan Love. If we did get some sort of a fight out of 9, then they were able to keep this game closer. Then I'd like the Jordan Love side of this, maybe stacking him with, let's see, we could stack him with Dubs, or better yet, Watson. Where's Watson at? Watson's still pretty cheap at 4,600, but he put up a 20-point week last week. But he would be the guy that, maybe they lean on with these other injuries to the okay, so I got a nugget here from Rich Rebar, Sharp Football Analysis. Vikings have allowed a 45.8% catch rate to wideouts on throws 20 or more yards downfield, which is 28th in the league, allowing 5 touchdowns, which is second most on those targets. So, yeah, Watson would definitely be in play with that information at 4,600. So I do like Watson and potentially Love stacks there. And then you can obviously run it back with either, like Jefferson or Addison. The Packers have not been great against the wideouts. They've been giving up 24.2 DraftKings points. So both those guys, for me, would be in play in this matchup here. As far as the running backs, going to Aaron Jones, not really interested in Aaron Jones this week, but I do like those receiving options. Let's go to Indy versus Kansas City. This game, we are looking at a 49.5 point total with Kansas City as 3.5 point favorites. This is another one of the games that I like targeting this week. It's a potential for shootout. We got Mahomes in desperation mode now. God, he's been doing pretty bad the last couple of weeks, facing off against more difficult defenses. But we just saw Davis Mills, have a decent performance against Buffalo, and they just got into a buzzsaw with Denver. So better matchup this week with the Colts, even though the Colts just signed Sauce Gardner. The Colts are giving up 17.2 DraftKings points. That's kind of a middling situation for Patrick Mahomes. But Patrick Mahomes, like I said, he's in desperation mode. Colts have been giving up 21 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. That's going to make Kelsey interesting this week. Kelsey has had a kind of somewhat of a resurgence this year, especially recently. We've had a couple 20 DraftKings points weeks from him. But with their backs against the wall, I think that Kelsey is a guy that they're more likely to lean against. They got their playoff lives on the line here. They're in a tough division, and they're falling behind with all these losses. They're not winning those lucky one-score games. Like, they're a better equipped team, but they're losing those one-score games this year, even though they look better than they did last year. Rashee Rice, the Colts are giving up 18.7 DraftKings points. We should see him avoid in the slot Sauce Gardner. So maybe Sauce Gardner would be more focused on Xavier Worthy, which makes Rashee Rice interesting at Indy. Colts giving up 12.8 DraftKings points a game to the slot position. So Mahomes double stacks to Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce could be in play this week. And I would probably run it back. What's the price on Mahomes? Has he at least come down in price? He's at 6,800. That's pretty up there, but not terrible for Patrick Mahomes. If we're looking at the run back option, Chiefs defense has been pretty good. I would probably lean with Jonathan Taylor if I was picking a run back. Chiefs defense has been pretty good, but Jonathan Taylor is probably where I would go. He seems to be matchup proof. Look at that, 52.6 DraftKings points in week 10. I mean, this guy's been a stud this year. As far as receivers, I don't see a whole lot that I like as far as those matchups for the receivers. They're both bad matchups for the receivers. The running backs have a bad matchup too, but I would lean more towards Jonathan Taylor as my run back in this one. But you don't have to put a run back at all, honestly. You could just double stack the Chiefs, and like Jonathan Taylor at 10K, we're gonna need like a 30 point, 40 point week out of him. So just keep that in mind if you run it back with him. We might be able to just not run it back with anybody, or put in a guy like Alec Pierce or something like that. Seattle versus Tennessee. Let me check something real quick on Kansas City. Let's see if we got any injuries. Maybe that'll affect the. Najee Johnson is still out. I don't see a whole lot there to improve the matchup. Pacheco is out though. Keep that in mind for Kareem Hunt if you want to do anything with Kareem Hunt this week. So Seattle versus Tennessee. Another game to kind of skip over. Tennessee's just a garbage team. Darnold, it's a good matchup for Darnold with them giving up 19.6 DraftKings points to the quarterback. But, Seattle's a team that naturally wants to use its running backs. So the way I'd go is looking at the running backs in this one. You could start either or, honestly. Walker could bust out a long touchdown. Charbonnet could score a couple touchdowns in the short yardage situations. One is Charbonnet's 4,900, Walker is 5,400. So both those guys are going to be in play. I would imagine that Seattle takes a pretty significant lead on Tennessee. It's a 13.5 point favorites for them in a 40.5 point total. So just a game to skip in general. With Tennessee, I will say that Seattle's given up 16.2 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. So that's going to put Chiga Konkwu or Gunnar Helm in play if you want to use one of those guys. I think that Jackson Smith and Jigba is so efficient that even when the spreads are this wide, you can still use him. But we're going to need more than 20 points out of him at 9K. So maybe we look at other options, but he's in consideration, and along with those running backs. They could try to get Sam Darnold a get right game in this one too, after just being seeing ghosts against the Rams last week. So we got the Jacksonville Jaguars versus Arizona. You've seen these games that I've gone through. This is why this game is appealing again. Arizona's appealing again, and we're starting to see Jacoby Brissett now is looking at 12.5% ownership in large field contests. That's high for a running back. And he's just proven that Kyler Murray is not a good quarterback. 47.5 point total in this one with Jacksonville's 2.5 point favorites. They're playing in Arizona, which makes me surprised that Jacksonville would be the favorites in this one. Jacoby Brissett has been, he's been playing well, and, Jacksonville's given up 23.3 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position. So, that puts him in another good spot. They've been giving up 22.9 to wideouts. We're missing Marvin Harrison again. He's still recovering from his appendicitis. So Harrison out again. That's going to put Wilson in play. Last week, like I said, I screwed that up. He ended up scoring 36. He basically went for 10x on his salary return last week. 4,800 this week. That's a significant bump for him. But they really don't have any other receivers to throw to. Trey McBride's going to be highly owned. He's at 26% or something like that for a tight end position, which is gigantic. But he's at 6,800. You're getting basically wide receiver one outputs out of him: 30 DraftKings points, 30 DraftKings points, almost 30 DraftKings points, 21 DraftKings points with Brissett throwing to him. So been a massive upgrade for Trey McBride having Brissett throw to him. And the Jaguars are giving up. He's in a great matchup. They're giving up, let's see, how much are they giving up? They're giving up 22.2 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. So everything lines up for these Jacoby to McBride stacks to work again this week. I don't know if it's just like a glitch in the schedule or something that this stack has been able to go off every week for 5 weeks straight. If they've just been getting the favorable matchups for 5 weeks straight, but he's in another favorable matchup this week. On the other side, the only guy I'd probably be interested in is ETN. ETN has been coming alive a little bit these last few weeks. He's at 5,900, which is affordable for us, but Arizona's given up 25 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. I don't like the pass catchers on Jacksonville. I've talked about it week after week. We just have not seen any value in Trevor Lawrence's like upside in throwing to these guys. He doesn't elevate any of these players. Even Brian Thomas has not delivered for us when he's been healthy. And they picked up Jacoby Myers, who's been getting the massive target share since he joined the team. But look at what he's done with it. The same issue that we see with all these Jags receivers. They're just Jags when Trevor Lawrence is throwing to them. And the only guy, like I said, who I'd be interested in is ETN. Lawrence, like he snipes the touchdowns and short yardage situations with running touchdowns. You can kind of see it here. 1 rushing touchdown, 2 rushing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns. We could see a rushing touchdown out of Trevor Lawrence this week against Arizona, being vulnerable against the run. Maybe in my underdog video, I'll have that as my my anytime touchdown pick to add Trevor Lawrence in there, depending on what the multiplier would be. Keep an eye on that. Speaking of underdog, while I'm talking about it, this is what I did in the most recent game, Houston versus Buffalo. I had 4 out of 5 picks right. 3 out of 4 picks right. This would have been a 50x return. Sign up for Underdog. Use the promo code SEEK, SEEK. They're going to give you $100 with your first $5 play, $100 in bonus funds. So make sure to check that out. And you can see it was down to Xavier Hutchinson. Reason I went with Xavier Hutchinson in this game was because I like the matchup for the slot, and Hutchinson had been the main slot guy, or at least the co-main slot guy with Christian Kirk. Kirk had not done anything, so I went with Xavier Hutchinson, who had longer multiplier for anytime touchdown. And then, of course, Christian Kirk ended up scoring the touchdown, but I was debating between those guys, and I just picked the wrong guy. If you guys see me put out these videos where I have 4 picks or 5 picks, my multiplier is usually I pick a guy who I think has a good chance of scoring a touchdown at longer odds. And that juices up these pick'ems to big numbers. I had like a 51x pick'em just the other day. And then a couple weeks earlier than that, I ended up getting a 81x hit with my pick'em. So these have been hitting at a decent rate. You're going to want to subscribe or sign up for an account at Underdog. Use the promo code SEEK, SEEK, to get that bonus and follow along with some of these. I only put $5 on these pick'ems because it's a pick'em. It's basically like playing a showdown lineup, except it's more difficult because every player has a 50% chance of, 50% or less chance of hitting their line. So got 4 I got 3 out of 4 in that one. The one that I hit recently was the Raiders versus the Cowboys. I went 4 for 4 in that one. Genty was an easy play there. This is just like 2 days ago. So this is like a week. I've had 2 where I almost hit 50 to 1 on these pick'ems. Trey Tucker was easy for me to go over on, and Pickens I really liked in that matchup, and he ended up going well over the receiving yards. I could have bumped up those receiving yards higher than 64, honestly, and juiced up that multiplier. But just a look over at Underdog, see what else I do on the YouTube account. I put out the short videos usually the night before or the morning of those games. And on the main slate, I'll be putting it up at some point tonight. So check out the YouTube page, subscribe to that channel, and keep updated on that. But back to the game, Brissett to Wilson, maybe run it back with ETN is the stack that I like for this game. Cleveland versus Las Vegas. This is another game we can skip over pretty much. This one is a 36.5 point total. We got Shadir Sanders starting in this one. We got Vegas as 3.5 point favorites, but Sanders is dirt cheap at 4,200. So there could be some entertainment in starting him this week, but he's one of those guys that just keeps running backwards and he gets sacked. And he just doesn't know what to do under pressure. We'll see what he's able to pull off in this game. If we want to give him the benefit of the doubt, he's 4,200. I don't know if I'd stack him with anyone necessarily. If I did stack him, it'd probably be Jerry Jeudy. Vegas has been giving up 15.1 DraftKings points a game to the slot. Jeudy hasn't been really running the slot. That's been more Cedric Tillman. Let me get an idea here. Browns slot receiver. Yeah, I just don't get a good read. I think it's Cedric Tillman. I have him at 40% in the slot. So, he would be my guess. I'm going to have to do some more research on that. But if I was going to stack him with somebody, Cedric Tillman might be interesting. Or you could go to the tight end position. Not a great matchup for tight end, though. They're only Vegas only giving up 11.1 DraftKings points to the tight end position. So probably better off going with one of these receivers. But they have been giving up. Vegas has been giving up 18 DraftKings points, so they're a middling matchup for receiver. But they're going to have Max Crosby putting pressure on Shadir Sanders throughout the whole game. So it's very difficult to picture him having a decent game. But at that price, at 4,200, I could talk myself onto it. You guys can hear me talking myself onto it. We could stack him with Jeudy or Tillman and hope for the best. As far as my run back, I wouldn't even run it back because Geno Smith is just terrible. He's a terrible in this offense. He wasn't that good to begin with, but Geno Smith is in a bad spot this week against Cleveland's defense. So all the more to potentially not run it back with anybody. With Dallas versus Philly, this on paper would have been an interesting game, but Dallas got a massive upgrade to their defense with their run defense, with the Williams acquisition, and we're looking at a total of 47.5 points with Philly as 3.5 point favorites in this one, even though they're playing in Dallas. I don't know where we're seeing rain. They're playing in a dome. But yeah, Dallas should be in a difficult spot against this Philly defense, but Philly's their matchup looks good on paper. Both these teams improved their defenses before the trade deadline. Philly, picked up Jalen Phillips, who's been a stud already, and Williams last week, prevented Ashton Genty from doing anything. He had 7 yards. Ashton Genty had 7 total rushing yards last week. So very difficult matchup here. It's going to be more of a defensive slog. If I was going to go anywhere, I might try to target the Philly passing game against Dallas and go with, maybe Jalen Hurts to A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown got 11 targets. You could tell they were trying to feed him after being unhappy. So, we could see A.J. Brown do something in this one. Let's see what they've done against A.J. Brown in the past here. We'll go to Dallas versus A.J. Brown. Going to look at game logs. Sort it. Going to Dallas. We're seeing in the most recent games, 8 yards, 36 yards, 109 yards, 94, 66. He was doing good in the past. Their offense coordinator is just terrible. He's not getting A.J. Brown involved in the games, but it could be A.J. Brown's attitude too. Maybe they're not happy with him. But there is some upside to the play. But if they feel that they got him enough targets last week, then maybe we see Devontae Smith get the opportunities in this week's game. Looking at 11.4 DraftKings points is what they've given up to this slot. So it's a better matchup for A.J. Brown. They're running Dallas is running a higher rate of zone coverage, so that favors Devontae Smith a little bit more. So, Devontae Smith and Jalen Hurts would be the stack I'd look at. As far as running it back, it's tough to run it back in this one because of all the additions that they made to their defense, but they still had Adoree Jackson on the outside. So maybe George Pickens again. It might be another week to look at George Pickens in this one. Atlanta versus New Orleans. We are looking at a 39.5 point total in this one with Atlanta as 1.5 point dogs. Let me check that. Let me double check that. I don't know if I see that. Let's see. Kind of surprised to see them as dogs, which is why I want to check and double check, see what the most recent. Oh, they're missing Penix, but I don't think Penix is that much of a downgrade there. So we're looking at, Atlanta is 1.5 point dogs in this one. What do we got for wide? Oh, Drake London's out too. Okay. London's out. Yeah, okay, now I can see it. We got Shook, who made his debut, or Shuck, a couple weeks ago. He had a good game last week, 19 DraftKings points against Carolina. If we're looking at the matchup here, Atlanta's given up 19.7 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position, giving up 34 DraftKings points to the running back, and they're giving up 23.2 to wideouts. We are unfortunately missing, let's see, on the other side, New Orleans only been giving up 14.2 to the quarterback position, 21.8 to the running back position. Primarily vulnerable versus the tight end position. So maybe we see Kirk Cousins throwing to Kyle Pitts in this one. We got Kirk Cousins down at 4,400. And he started a few weeks ago. He did terrible. But, he's also rusty. Came off an Achilles tear last year, ended up getting taken over by Michael Penix towards the end of the year. But, he's had enough time to rest. In this matchup against the Saints, I don't hate Kirk Cousins this week at 4,400. Veteran quarterback coming into a situation like this. Let's see what the Saints game logs have been. They're giving up about 20 something points a game. I mean, their defense is pretty terrible. All right, so let's take a look at this a little bit deeper here. Darnell Mooney would be the primary receiver, and Mooney has been playing like crap all season, but he's a deep ball guy, and we do have a deep ball thrower in Cousins. And who else do we have for the receivers here? With Drake London out, we're looking at options like the Sills guy. He got 2 targets last week. I'm going to have to do some more digging on this one too. But I kind of like the stack on this one. I kind of like the game stack here. Even though it's a 39.5 point total. It's a weird week. These quarterbacks that are in the best spots have difficult matchups, or they have blowout situations. So, Chicago, Pittsburgh is interesting. Atlanta, New Orleans is interesting. Not really interested too much in Philly, Dallas, and Arizona, Jacksonville is interesting too. So we got some interesting games this week that we can target. Let's start off here with Kirk Cousins. Let's put him in. Let's stack him with Kyle Pitts. I'm going to give him Darnell Mooney too. On the opposite side, make sure to hit that like button. Give me the 70 likes to put my favorite picks in the comment section. 100 likes will get the write-up. I think I forgot that at the top of the show, but you guys know what to do with those likes. Subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to Sport Nuggets. Trying to get a decent amount of subscribes to that, so that we can get an idea of your feedback on the site. This is for my YouTube subscribers. I'm basically giving you guys like a big head start on using the site and kind of being active on it, being engaged on it. It's a free beta preview. You just got to sign up for an account, and you'll be able to access all the news and nuggets. And we'll be putting insights in there. Like I said, I'll be putting insights on this slate once I have a little bit better idea of what I like on it. So Cousins to Mooney and Pitts. Let's run it back with let's see. The wideouts have been doing the best, and they just lost Raheed Shaheed. So let's put Olave in as our run back option. So if we wanted the game stack this game, competitive divisional game, we got a Cousins stack, double stack here, which could be interesting for us this week. Let's take a look at running back. You know what? Honestly, instead of Mooney, we probably put Bijan in there. Now let's take Bijan out for now. What's Saints are giving up 21 DraftKings. Bijan is in play. Let's put Gibbs in there. Screw it. Let's put Bijan. Let's get Mooney out of there. Let's find a defense. Jets versus Baltimore, Giants versus Detroit, New England, that's Cincy. Tennessee's got Seattle. Don't like any of those. Kansas City has Indy has Kansas City. Minnesota has Green Bay. New Orleans has Atlanta. Dallas has Philly. Arizona has Jacksonville. I don't necessarily hate Arizona this week, especially if we get that cornerback back. Steelers have Chicago. Okay, so Steelers. You know what? I like the Browns. Let's get the Browns in there. Browns for our defense, that's going to give us $5K per guy. We take a look at some of these receivers. All these stud receivers are in blowouts. So it's tough to kind of get behind any of those guys. I do kind of like Rashee Rice. So if I like Rice, maybe we go with Taylor as a run back there and go with Mooney. Yeah, we can't do that, unfortunately. Taylor is just going to be so price prohibitive this week. But what we could do is get Gibbs out of there. I like Gibbs a lot this week, but let's take a look at some of our other options. Yeah, I don't like a lot of, you know what, like what is, where are we at with Henderson? 6,700. Let's take out Gibbs. Let's put in Henderson. 2,800. It leaves us with, we can look at some of these flex options. Probably going to see what tight ends are at 2,800. I did see a couple cheap guys when we were going through everything. Darnell Washington, Gunnar Helm, Gesicki. You know, we could plug into Gesicki. We could go lower on the Browns if we wanted to. Let's go with the Cardinals. And let's look at the flex spot again with 3K. See if we got some better options. Not really. Let's say we want to put Michael Wilson in. And yeah, see, Taylor just like it bogs down the whole lineup. So very difficult to get him in there. 8,200. Let's put Gibbs in there. Let's go down from the Cardinals to a lesser defense. We can go with I don't mind the Vikings versus Green Bay. So, you know, that gives us a Cousins stack. We got Cousins to Mooney and Pitts. We got the run back in Olave. And then we got Henderson and Gibbs as our running backs. I like both those running backs. We got Rashee Rice in there. We got Michael Wilson jumping on the bandwagon there. And then the Vikings D. So, you know, that's potential idea for a stack if you want to go with Cousins. If we wanted to go with Shadir Sanders naked, this will be a good one for us because, well, they're playing in a dome for starters, so that's good. So if we go with Shadir, if we wanted to put someone with him, I would probably go with Jerry Jeudy. He's cheap enough at 4,100, and he should get the most targets. And then running it back, I'm not going to even run it back. I'm going to go with the defense on the Browns here. Or no, you know what? I'm going to run it back with the Raiders defense because Shadir Sanders is probably going to make a lot of mistakes, but we could get some rushing upside out of him, and we could get. There's a reason why he was projected to be the number 2 quarterback drafted before like everything went to hell for him. So we got a cheap stack here, cheap game stack here. That'll enable us to put in some of these expensive options at the running back position. I like Taylor and I like Gibbs the most. Let's try to get Henderson in that flex spot too. Leaves us with 4,400 per guy. Let's go with the cheap tight end option. I'm gonna go with Gesicki at 2,600. That'll give me 5,300 per guy left for my wide receivers. We can get Wilson in there. And then 5,800 is what it would leave us with. And that gives us options like Jameson Williams, Devontae Smith. That's a sweet spot right there. So we got a lot of good options there. Jordan Addison, Tucker, if you wanted another run back on that Vegas side. So a lot of good options there. And we got a lot of studs in here as well. So if Sanders goes off, or doesn't even have to go off, all he has to do at 4,200, he's got to score us like 16 fantasy points to be a good start. And Judy, 16 fantasy points as well. You know, he's capable of it. Like if him and Sanders have a connection, they could score. The team itself could score like 16 points, and these guys could score 16 DraftKings points each. And then we got the Raiders D to cover us on the interceptions, the sacks, the fumbles. Like, that's a pretty good stack right there. I kind of like that game stack. It's a unique one too. And that sets us up perfectly. We got Taylor, we got Gibbs, and we got Henderson in our stacks here. So we got like the best running backs, expensive running backs in good matchups. And then we got options on these cheap wide receivers. So I like this way to go about building this week. Let's do one more. I've given you guys some scrubby picks. We like those garbage quarterback stacks on this show. I'm going to go to Cincy versus New England. Let's go with a Drake May. And you know what? Yeah, I think Drake May is going to have a big game this week just because of the situation with everybody questioning like the legitimacy of the team. I'm going to put Stephon Diggs in there. I'm going to give this one Henderson as well. And I'm going to run it back with Higgins. That's an easy one. And I'm going to run it back too with Gesicki. And as far as the defense goes, let me double check Gesicki's matchup. I want to make sure that I even like that matchup. Yeah, they're giving up 16 DraftKings points to the tight end positions. That's a pretty good matchup for us. All right, let's go to the rest of this build. Jonathan Taylor, I like him when I can, have the excess salary, but I don't like him at 10K in general. So let's get Gibbs in this one. Let's go with our defense. Let's go with Cleveland again here. That's going to leave us 4,500 per guy. We can get Michael Wilson in here again. He's going to blow up now that I start him after I hated him last week. And 4,200 for our flex leaves us with options like Hollywood Brown, Dallas Goedert, Mac Hollins. Give us another run back option. We already got Diggs in there though. And we got Booty back this week, so it's not going to be as good a situation for Hollins this week. Not really seeing a whole lot I like in that range for for flex. If we wanted to, trying to see what we would be able to do here. We could swap out Diggs for Booty, but I like Diggs better. But if we did that for Booty, our options at flex would be better with Aaron Jones, Jameson Williams, Swift, Devontae Smith. So we got a lot of good options if we do that. But I kind of like going Diggs and just kind of figuring out an option on that other side that we can go with. That's just like a cheap option for us. Can't quite get to let's go cheaper with this defense. Zona is 200 less. Leaves us with 4,400. We could get Dortch in if we want it. We got Pitts in if we want to in that situation. So it leaves us with a little bit more options, but we can play around with. You guys can play around with that one. Let's do one more. And let's get that stack in with Arizona. So Brissett to Wilson. And we can give him McBride as well. And then running it back on Jacksonville's side with ETN. Oops. All right, so let's look at the rest of our build here. We can go to Gibbs. Gibbs, you see me keep going to Gibbs. I do like Gibbs this week. Let's get Henderson in there too. Let's get the Cleveland Browns defense and 4,600 per guy left. Leaves us in that spot again. Darnell Mooney. I don't hate Darnell Mooney as the only option really for. Oh, we got Christian Watson at 4,600. So let's use him. And we got 4,700 for our next guy. So we could use Jacoby Myers if we wanted to run back. Darius Slayton with Jameis throwing to him. And yeah, we got plenty of options there. So Jameis would also give us like a run back to Jahmyr Gibbs. So I like the correlation in this one. Gives us some options. Like I said, it's going to be a weird week with all the weird lines that we got this week. But keep an eye on the comment section. Give me 100 likes so I can put those favorites in the comment section, or 70 likes for the favorites in the comment section, and then 100 likes for the write-up. Sign up for Underdog. Use the promo code SEEK. Get that Sport Nuggets subscription, sportnuggets.com. Subscribe to it. You guys can start leaving comments on some of these nuggets. Start giving thumbs up, letting us know if some of these nuggets are just god awful. And AI has just put out a blob. A lot of these, like, I flooded the zone, guys. Like there was talk. Should we limit the nuggets? I was like, no, we got to flood the zone with nuggets. It's better to have too much information than not enough information. And we can sort it out. Like we can crowdsource the audience, let them figure out, which nuggets they like the best, which nuggets they don't like. I want to make sure that we get like all these players covered, which is why I wanted to flood the zone. I want to find those Chase Brown nuggets. I want to find those Sean Tucker nuggets so we know about these players before anybody else does. And the only way to do that is to flood the zone. And when I see good options like that, I'm going to be turning on the insights on those players and saying, hey, Chase Brown, start him in Showdown tonight. He's $200 and he is set up for a good opportunity tonight. Boom. We went, get a huge score out of him for Showdown. Same thing with Tucker. Last week could have had a insight on Sean Tucker. We got it now. I wanted to get it up before Thanksgiving. Sign up for an account over there and let's crush it, guys. Good luck, and I'll see you guys in the comments. I'm going to be putting out a Sunday night show with Spread a Stare at some point today.